What do you say, everybody? Welcome to Cover Crimson with Clint Lamb. I'm Mick Gillispie. We talk Alabama football Monday through Friday on this show, and we cover Alabama on this channel 24/7. And who knows, maybe one day we'll be live for 24/7. Clint, that's your dream.
Well, yeah. I mean, the 7 part might be a little bit
Can you imagine
ambitious.
that?
Yeah, the 24 part,
24/1.
Yeah, once a week maybe. I don't even know if I could do that, but I do think we have strong ambitions as far as that's concerned. And why not, man? I mean, yesterday we had a great show. We went in studio, we talked about a lot of different stuff, and I was sitting there at the end of it. We start talking about Elvis and Coleman Coliseum and kind of getting, just shooting the bull a little bit. And then I'm like, man, I could do this for another 4 hours.
Let's just problem.
Yeah, let's just keep going one day. Let's just not stop.
Like a whole show on concerts in Tuscaloosa back when they used to have excellent concerts. I mean, like the biggest acts, not like, we're kind of mid-level acts now, but I'm talking about the biggest of the big. I mean, you have Elvis. I mean, there's nothing smaller. But guys, sign up for Cover Crimson right now, covercrimson.com. Sign up for $1. We got a bunch of great information on Alabama, and we got a lot more to come, including exclusive shows that you'll only be able to watch on there, and then exclusive content that you can only read there. But we're doing it for you. We appreciate it. And right now you can sign up for $1. So thank you for hanging out. All right. Good news for Alabama or bad news for Alabama. Sporting news, All-American team had 4 Alabama players. Where's that sit compared to normal years? And who are these guys and how did they get there?
That's actually a good question as far as how it compares. I know for, most years, I feel like Alabama's typically sitting at like 5 or 6, maybe. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. Maybe sometimes, obviously,
feels
sometimes
like
it's
that.
More. But they have 4 on it right now, 2 on the first team, 2 on the second team. The 2 first teamers are Parker Brailsford, great for him, and then Graham Nicholson, who, both transfers, interestingly enough. And then the 2 second team guys are Tyler Booker and Malachi Moore. So you got 2 offensive linemen. When 2 of your 5 offensive linemen are on an All-American team preseason, and then you've got guys like former 5-star Caden Proctor, you got Jaden Roberts, who I think is one of the better guards in college football. It has the makings of a really good offensive line. But I will say this, man. Is it just me, or should Tyler Booker not be first team? I need to probably go look at the list. But I was surprised at seeing second team. So first team was, Tate Ratledge and Donovan Jackson from Ohio State. Okay, that's 2 really good players. But I still feel like and this always doesn't work out this way, but from an NFL draft perspective, I feel like Tyler Booker is certainly going to be in that conversation and very well could end up going ahead of either one of those or both of those guys.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to think either. I mean, it's a good question because, I told you I'm a super fan of his. I mean, I feel like he's the rock of this team, and Jaden Roberts. I mean, this is why I think the offensive line is so important, and we talked about the battle, at the right tackle spot in the past, but it doesn't even matter who wins that because the way that the offensive line works, those guys will be in there anyway. And now you got a center we went from maybe the worst center that I've ever remember at Alabama snapping the football. I'm sorry. I mean, it's just the truth. Okay. To maybe one of the best. Now I'm not saying he's going to be Ryan Kelly, but maybe he is. Maybe this is the next Ryan Kelly. I'd love to see that for Alabama.
I will say this, Mick. It's crazy to me that he's 290 now because just like he's that typical squatty, shorter center. I've seen people try to compare him to William Vlahos, former Alabama center. He's still not even close to being the same size. But he's kind of got that squatty presence where he's got like a wrestling background. He's got natural leverage because of that lack of height. But then, when he was playing at 275, I mean, they have this guy pulling over in Washington. I mean, the athleticism is off the charts, can climb to the second level extremely well, actually is a much more effective run blocker than you would think for a guy who is 275 pounds. And now that he's in the SEC, a lot of people are going to say, well, can you continue to do it in the SEC? Well, if he hadn't lost a lot of his athleticism and blocking prowess, which I mean, he's still going to have that nasty mentality he's always had, but now he's sitting at 290. I think he's pretty well equipped. I understand 290 is still undersized for the SEC, But for a guy who was, taking care of business against Pac-12 defenses at 275, I think, an extra 15 pounds is pretty impressive. He still doesn't look 290 to me. But, Parker Brailsford being a first-team guy, being one of only two of Alabama's first-team guys, the other one being a kicker, that kind of speaks volumes to kind of how he's viewed as a player and the importance of getting him. First of all, getting Kalen DeBoer was important enough, but you needed that style of player because of the importance of that position. Center is the first one touching the football on every play. He's got to be able to make a lot of calls. The communication has to be on point, and he's just got so much on his plate. I think that's what Seth McLaughlin really struggled with last year, was just everything that he had on his plate, whether it be snapping the football on top of, having to make pre-snap, checks and calls, having to worry about, as soon as you snap the football, you got an SEC nose tackle or nose guard ready to, you got to try to get him blocked. So it's Parker Brailsford is probably, I'm trying to think, is there anybody, Mick, that comes to your mind maybe that you would say would be a more important addition to Alabama this offseason?
No, and I'm 100% with you. You don't realize how important that position is until you see what it looks like without it. Go to the NFL when the Falcons had the big lead in the Super Bowl and blew it. Remember, their center, had a broken leg or something and left. And then the minute he left, everything fell apart for them. These guys are reading defenses. They're not just snapping the football. They're also blocking. There's a comfort level there between a center and a quarterback. We found out last year that one guy, once, a bad snap at the wrong time can ruin some games. And how many possessions, it was almost like turnovers. They're not necessarily turnovers, but some of those bad snaps might as well have been turnovers. And we're lucky that we beat Auburn last year after one of his bad snaps, but it didn't work out that way in the Rose Bowl. And having Brailsford in this spot to me is enormous. I love the fact that the guy's so strong too. Football and sports, there's a prototypical size, Clint, but you don't always have to be that size to be successful. Now, the question I want to ask you, and I'm putting you on the spot, so I don't know if you know the answer to this. I don't. He didn't practice in the spring, right? And we were all kind of wondering what the deal was. And some people were speculating, hey, maybe he's leaving, but that was never the case. And and obviously he stuck around.
Yeah, is there what are you asking though?
What happened?
Oh, okay. I just did.
What's he doing?
Well, I think everybody at various points in their life, they have some personal problems. I can't speak to what those could have been.
Right.
I can't speak to, you got to think there was a culture shock. I don't think it was like he was thinking about leaving. I just think he was going through some things. And I will tell you, in my opinion, if James Brockermeyer felt like he was truly going to continue to be in the competition and would have a very good chance of winning the job, I don't think he leaves. Right. So the fact that when he left, to me, that was the biggest statement as far as everything Kalen DeBoer was telling us. It wasn't coach speak. It was nothing on the surface that he was, he's feeling a certain way behind the scenes, but he's saying something to the public. He was saying straight up, hey, Parker Brailsford, there's no issues as far as him maybe transferring. He's, doing some stuff away from the team, whatever. And then, I think there was some honesty there. I don't think Alabama led James Brockermeyer along. And I respect that. They could have had more depth at the center position. They went out and got it in Gino Vandemark, and they got some other options. But Brockermeyer would have been a really good player in the system too. I just don't think he's first team All-American caliber like Parker Brailsford. And that's where
he's not. They'd be listed there now.
Great point. And so that's it. You can't blame Brockermeyer, and you can't blame Parker Brailsford because you don't know what Parker Brailsford was going through in the spring. And so it's just better not. He's here now and he's performing well and he's making first team All-American lists. And, is a very important part of Alabama's offensive line. I would, Tyler Booker, I think, is the best player. It's possible that Parker Brailsford, from a pure talent standpoint, could be like the third best offensive lineman that Alabama has this year. But I think from an important side of things, Parker Brailsford, maybe you can make an argument for Caden Proctor because he's your blindside protector. He's, if you can at least get one of your two tackles to play elite level football, which I think both are capable. But probably a lot of people would say Caden Proctor and at least get one of those tackle spots completely locked down and figured out. But I would make an argument for Parker Brailsford just because it's like you said, you don't realize just how important that position is until it's not doing its job consistently enough. And you were 100% correct. They should have lost maybe even, a couple of more games than they lost last year. Give Jalen Milroe a lot of credit because he overcame a lot of those problems. Now, he might have been contributing to the problem to some extent, just things that he couldn't handle pre-snap, that guys like Seth McLaughlin was having to take over. But give him all the credit in the world, because if he doesn't have that playmaking ability and the ability to stay cool, calm, and collected when, that most people go into panic mode when there's a fire snap and it's a bad snap and everything goes, kind of crazy. Give Jalen Milroe a lot of credit for overcoming it, but Parker Brailsford's a very, very important part of not only this Alabama offensive line, not only this Alabama offense, but of this entire Alabama team. And I think he's going to be a major reason why they continue to be really competitive and competing for a national championship.
I don't remember being this excited about an offensive lineman since Evan Neal. And I'm talking about Booker. I just love the guy. I've said that on here before. Part of it is I like him from seeing him on the next round. Part of it is that he helped keep Alabama's football team on offense together when I feel like there were maybe a coach on defense that was pulling guys out of the program. The players stepped up here and held this group together. And he's one of them. And the other thing is that he'll kick butt. I mean, he just does. So those are the three reasons why I'm really excited about this offensive line. And Clint, if they don't contend for the Joe Moore this year, I'll be very shocked.
Well, to me, the most important aspect of Tyler Booker is the leadership, because he's one of those guys, he's one of the most talented players on the team. He's going to be one of the highest drafted players on the team. But he does all the little things right. And that's lead by example. When you're a guy who could probably get by with not doing it the right way a little bit, he still does it the right way. And if that caliber of player is doing it the right way, then, hey, who am I? A guy fighting for a starting job, or I'm a second team guy and I'm doing special teams. I mean, if that guy's doing all the little things right, then who am I to try to shorten that on anybody else in this locker room? And then also, he's proof that I understand, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole or get on this topic, but he's proof that you don't have to be an in-state guy to have extreme love for the University of Alabama, period. I mean, the guy loves the place.
Guy. I love Alabama.
I mean, he had a chance to, I'm guarantee you, when all the craziness and chaos was going on with Nick Saban, when he chose to retire, if you don't think Tyler Booker, when you're talking about a shortage of quality offensive linemen in college football and especially on the NFL level, if you don't think he didn't have suitors trying to knock his door down with money and opportunities, and he wanted no part of it. To me, I mean, in-state guy or out-of-state guy, I don't think any player for Alabama or any player for Auburn, in-state, out-of-state, or whoever else, none of them love their university more than Tyler Booker. There might be some that love it as much, but nobody loves it more than Tyler Booker. And I think that speaks volumes about him as a person and as a player.
Yeah. Look, I'm all about, I think you got to recruit the circle, the radius of Alabama around the campus, but then you got to go out. And when you get people like this, guy's been coming to camps at Alabama since he was like this tall, Hey, I love those guys. So we'll see what happens with the offensive line. But another one of the questions, Clint, that people keep asking you and me too is, will Alabama's offense be pass happy? And what basically people are saying is, as much as we all loved Mike Leach, we do not want that offense at Alabama. Got to be balanced, right?
You have to have balance. And I think it's kind of a misconception about Kalen DeBoer. Is he going to throw the football a lot? Yes. Will he throw the football less with Jalen Milroe as his quarterback? Yes. And part of that will be by design. But part of it will also be because he's calling a pass play and Jalen's taking off, on an unscripted run and turning it into a run play. So, I mean, Michael Penix Jr. was non-existent in Washington's offense, the last couple of years. With Milroe, that's going to be the case. So that's automatically going to bring your pass attempts down relative to what Washington was doing. But then also, you got to think about it. Washington had one workhorse running back in Dylan Johnson, really good player, underrated player, and he was pretty much their entire run game. I mean, when you talk about the workload he got compared to the next player, it's like Derrick Henry level differences or Najee Harris 2020, differences or whatever, where the workload there's just or Brian Robinson in 2021, but there's like a massive discrepancy between the two. And at Alabama, you're going to have multiple players that you're going to want to get the football to in your backfield. And, that's going to be Justice Haynes. It's going to be Jam Miller. And you're also, whether it be on that unscripted stuff or if it's unscripted, design quarterback carries, you're going to want to have Jalen Milroe as a part of your run game as well. And so there's only so many plays in a football game. And it just, you might run more plays because Kalen DeBoer is it's Nick Sheridan. I know we keep referring to it as Kalen DeBoer, but it's the Sheridan DeBoer brain trust. They're going to be probably running more plays, but you're still going to have this balance, and there's no way you have Justice Haynes and Jam Miller as your two running backs and you're throwing the football 50 times a game. It's just not going to happen.
I gotta tell you, man, Justice Haynes, this guy reminds me of about as complete as a running back as you could have. Just the size. I love the size, the thickness. And then you got Jam, who can catch the ball out of the backfield, kind of that burst dude. Like these guys seem like they're just the perfect combination of running back for this team right here. And I know there's some other guys that are a little bit deeper, but there's no chance that Kalen DeBoer is going to look at this offense and be like, we got to throw the ball every down. When you put that offensive line that we just talked about with these two guys, in particular for me, I just feel like Justice is an every down back, man. I feel like he's that guy. He's going to block. He can catch a little bit. He can run. He's big and physical if he's got to be, but he can outrun you at the same time. See this guy being stronger as the game goes on.
Well, what I love about Alabama's running back room is, especially there at the top, but really the entire room to an extent, especially your top three. But it's 3 down potential from all of them. Like there's no kind of tell, you bring in, we talk about thunder and lightning. It's like thunder and thunder and then lightning and lightning. It's all just 2 guys. And so you can kind of get both. And from a defensive perspective, there's not a whole lot of tells as far as what you think Alabama may be running with one guy in the game versus the other. And Alabama's done a pretty good job of having like stables of those types of players the last few years. I think Nick Saban really valued that. He's the one that got Jam Miller and Justice Haynes to Tuscaloosa and Richard Young as well. So obviously he deserves a lot of credit for that. But, Kalen DeBoer's going to take advantage. And, I do think that a guy like Justice Haynes could be a volume player. The good part about running backs in today's college football is they understand the importance of keeping limited tread on the tires. From an NFL perspective, you can get the Derrick Henry treatment all you want to and get 300 plus, 400 carries in a season or whatever it was. But, NFL teams are going to look at you and say, yeah, that's great. You proved that you can handle a large workload, but how much more you got in the tank? Derrick Henry obviously was a special player. He's still going strong in the NFL after getting that type of work in the NFL the last several years on top of what happened in that 2015 season. But, it's going to be different. Justice Haynes understands that he's going to be part of a committee. Jam Miller understands it. I will say, watching Justice Haynes go through running back drills, I haven't been doing it too long, but just the footwork, the consistency, like going through those rope drills, it's a machine. It's like a sewing machine, watching it go to work as far as the speed and consistency in which he can do it. And he's not touching any. You're watching even guys like Jam Miller and they're getting hung up a little bit on the ropes. Justice Haynes, man, just one of the most impressive guys I've ever seen go through those drills. And it translates to the football field. And I've loved watching him compete from a practice situation or a practice perspective. And also what he was able to do in the Rose Bowl last year. I'm looking at this and thinking, man, I cannot wait to see what this guy does with a little bit of volume, operating within, not only Alabama's offense, but Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan's offense. And I think that's going to be very fun to watch for Alabama fans. And it's just a matter of, what does the workload look like? Because there's a lot of guys who deserve touches in this offense. But, Justice Haynes is up there at or near the top.
Well, I'm guessing he's going to get a lot, but I see the same thing. Just like the scouting eye, right? It just looks different with him. Like yes. He has that smooth yet big, footwork's great. The balance is excellent. And I see him talk and I'm like, man, this guy's got a great brain. This is you're recruiting. That's why these are 5-star guys. Absolutely. It's more than just, hey, I can go out there and run the ball. It's the character that goes along with it.
And, kind of getting back to what the original question was, which, the pass happy offense and stuff. One thing I'll say, I want to say Washington averaged 118 roughly yards per game last year, that was ranked outside of the top 100. You look at Alabama, they were probably known more as a run first offense. I mean, they definitely were. And they averaged 172 or 173 yards, which was, down there. I mean, it was right around, right inside, I think, the top 50 in the country. And people have kind of wondered, okay, one thing that Stacey Blackwood brought up on the message board today, a question that he had is, what are their rushing totals? What does that look like? When you're trying to feed a Justice Haynes, you're trying to feed a Jam Miller, you might be getting a Richard Young involved a little bit. You want to continue to make sure that Jalen Milroe, to a certain extent, is a volume carrier as far as, getting the quarterback some opportunities in the run game. What does that mean for Alabama's rushing totals? Because you're also wanting to implement more of a passing game. I could see it being kind of 2020-esque, where, you looked at Alabama's run game, you looked at their offensive line, you looked at Najee Harris, a first-round talent at the running back position. He handled a ton of volume. You had a good complementary piece there with Brian Robinson Jr. But when you looked at the numbers, the totals in that season, they ranked just inside the top 50 again. And you had Mac Jones slinging the football around, Devontae Smith winning the Heisman. Obviously, that kind of speaks volumes. Mac Jones was up there with the top 5 finish as well. Ends up going first round along with Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. So you had like this dynamic passing attack, but you knew they had a very strong, very effective complementary run game. But when you actually looked at the numbers, they weren't ranked in the top 25 in rushing yards, a rushing offense or whatever. It was down there because you had to make room for that passing game. But no one would have looked at that group and said that's not an effective run game. It was a very effective run game.
I'm not going to say this in a way that is disparaging towards the guys that we have had over the last couple of years, but I feel like Justice is along the same elk as Najee Harris. He's the last guy to me that could do it all. I mean, and I could be totally wrong here, but that is just my gut feeling is that he's a grand slam hitter, not just a home run hitter, a grand slam hitter. Brian Robinson was great holding the ball, is going to fumble, he's going to get you 10 or 15 yards. And he does that in the NFL, but he's not a home run hitter. And it's more of, in the NFL, it doesn't matter because those guys really don't run that much anyway. I mean, it's like you get like a 10-yard run. It's like, oh my gosh, that's a big run unless you're Derrick Henry. In college, I mean, think about how many runs like Najee jumps over a guy, turns like 5 yards into 35 yards, my feeling on Justice as he gets used to carrying the ball and playing and running behind this offensive line, I just see him being the next Najee, like just boom, hit the hole and go. But if he's got to go physically through it, he'll do that too.
Yeah. I mean, and I can see that. And, obviously Najee was a lot bigger of a player, even though I think Haynes has got size for a 5'10" and a half type of guy. He's a wide shoulder.
Side. Yeah.
Very, and really a lot of the times you want the shorter, stockier running backs.
That's right.
The Mark Ingrams of the world, because they have that natural leverage. It's all about creating leverage, low pad wins.
Well, you can't see them too. I mean, think about playing football and those guys, like they were some of the toughest guys to have to try to tackle because, they're moving behind this big offensive line, which is already going to be good for Alabama. And then all of a sudden you don't know where the break's going to come. And then boom, here comes this guy at you. And by the time you see him, it's pretty hard to make an adjustment to get over there. And then on top of that, the guy's physical enough to make it not very fun to tackle him.
Well, I mean, and just from a talent standpoint, I mean, just look at some of your first round running backs. You put Josh Jacobs, who was part of a committee as well. I still think his usage, even though it was solid, and Damian Harris was certainly effective. Bo Scarborough was certainly effective. So it's not like, it's unfortunate that Josh Jacobs didn't get more run on the college level because we've seen how spectacular he is on the NFL level when he's been given kind of that workhorse type of role. He could have done that at Alabama. But, whether you're talking about, you've got him as a player, you've got Najee Harris, who kind of was the more of the workhorse type. You had Derrick Henry, fell to the second round because everybody just never seen a running back with that type of build and, just how he ran, the hip flexibility. That was all a big question mark in the pre-draft process. But you look at a lot of these first round talents, the Mark Ingram being another one, Trent Richardson being another one. And it's like, look at what Alabama's had recently. It's not that it's bad. Brian Robinson Jr., is a 3-down guy as well. He doesn't really have the home run speed, but his pass protection's up there. He can catch the football. He's got effective hands. He's not a dynamic presence out of the backfield, but he's a reliable. Yeah, and he can handle the volume and bang between the tackles and do all that stuff. But he's a third-round talent. Jace McClellan went in the 5th round. I think Roydell Williams is a good player. Where do we think he's going? Probably not even 5th round. So it's like, you had Jahmyr Gibbs, the dynamic player, but he was so different other than maybe a Kenyon Drake.
We wasted him, Clint. We wasted him.
He was so different than any other Alabama running back that we had seen. And really he's one of the most unique running backs in the NFL right now, too. He's a receiver in a lot of ways, playing the running back position, and he can handle, he's almost like, I mean, he's not Deebo Samuel, but it's almost like if they decided to move Deebo to a running back permanently, he's, in some ways that kind of player. But when you look at the typical, Justice Haynes is the typical 3-down Alabama running back where, hey, if you got to do some off tackle stuff, if you got to, have a guy catching footballs out of the backfield like Najee Harris, I mean, he had 40 plus receptions his last year, or maybe it was the next to his last year, one of those, where it's like, I think still until Jahmyr Gibbs, it was the most that any running back had during the Nick Saban era. And he's a 230, 6'2", 235-pound running back. So he was different, but like, if you need a guy catching the football in the backfield, if you need that pass protection, if you need a guy to bang between the tackles and be a goal line worker as well, Justice Haynes does all of that well. And I think Jam, to a certain extent, does all of that, to a very high degree as well. I just think that Justice, there's a reason that he was considered this very special talent as a running back coming out of high school. And I fully expect, it's going to be like that, Josh Jacobs, Damian Harris, Bo Scarborough group where they're going to be very efficient with their touches. They might not, because they're spreading the ball out quite a bit, they might not get the volume they would elsewhere. But I think just being fresh and the way that this Kalen DeBoer offense is going to scheme as far as using motion and misdirection to create opportunities in the run game, you're going to see all these guys out, back then, all of Alabama's running backs were averaging like 6, in the high fives, 5.7 or 6.1 or whatever. In recent years, that hadn't been the case. They've been sitting 4.5, 5, 5.2, 5.5, whatever. I think you get back to where the efficiency is a lot more there, and you're maybe getting a lot more guys involved.
So the answer is yes, they're going to run the ball. All right, Clint, as we wrap it up, again, covercrimson.com. I don't know why I slowed up on that, but let me start over again. Cut it, guys. Covercrimson.com. Sign up for $1 right now, Clint. What do you got going on there? And then remind everybody where we're going to be tonight.
Well, yeah, we're going to be at Walk-Ons. I can't wait, man. I will say I brought this along. I don't know if you've seen it, Mick, but the koozies. Have you seen this, brother?
Yeah, those are sweet. How come I don't have one? I need a beer in mine.
Yeah, you didn't get there early enough to the office yesterday. I saw a couple. Hey, can I get a couple of those maybe? And they're going to be giving them out tonight. You might end up getting one if you show up. Or we're going to be at Walk-Ons. I think it starts at 5 and it's going to run until it's over. So I can't wait. And we got a lot going on the message board. Like I said, I've just kind of left it at Stacy does such a good job of creating the conversations. Mm-hmm. I just say, what's your topics for the day, man? What do you want to know as far as from them? And then I jump in and I give my input like I'm a subscriber as well. And, I try to do some research and give people the information, but Stacy, man, he's popping it off as far as, just creating the topics of conversation. Go get involved. If you haven't already, it's only $1 for a month. And what we plan, it's very easy to cancel too, by the way. I want to point that out because not everybody, if you want to go through the canceling process, if you're not happy with the product you're getting, a lot of people will twist your arm. It's one easy button. It's right there, clear as day. If you don't like what you're getting, you can get out of it fairly easy. But we're confident in the fact that we're going to get people, we're going to keep people. So we don't have no problem putting it out there for everybody because we know the content's going to back it up.
You're going to make it worth your while, guys. We got a lot of fun stuff coming up. Some stuff we can't really even get into right now, but I promise you, it's going to be some fun stuff going on.
Fireworks, I think is what they say.
Hey, I love that. All right, for Clint Lamb, I'm Mick Gillispie. Thanks for hanging out with us. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up and check out our other shows. We got a ton of content coming, and there's a ton of content on there right now. Roll Tide, everybody.